The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to Experiential DBT for Eating Disorders and Addictions. My name is Monica Ostroff. I am the director of the Cambridge Eating Disorder Center here in New Hampshire. I will be your host this afternoon. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you will see handouts for Experiential DBT. There's about 5 of them there for you that contain some resources and just things that you can use even starting today with your individual clients and your group clients. Also, you will see a little chat box, which is a place that allows you to ask questions. Those questions will go directly to Janine Vlasakis, who is the Director of Professional Relations here at DBT, and she will be helping us today. She will also funnel any questions that you may have for me so that I can answer them as we go through this presentation. I hope that you will find some things that are useful here today. My goal is really to inspire you to be creative in how you deliver DBT to your clients. And so I'm going to actually start off with kind of a brief review of DBT. So for those of you who are intensively trained, this definitely will be a review. And for those of you who have never been intensively trained, hopefully this will be some information that will kind of ground you in what DBT is, how it's designed, how it works, and why it is effective, particularly with eating disorder and addictive clients. So DBT was developed in the early 1990s by Marshall Linehan. The primary resources that we use are Linehan's textbook for cognitive behavioral treatment of borderline personality disorder, as well as the skills training manual for treating borderline personality disorder. And both of those actually carried a 1993 copyright, except in 2014, Linehan was kind enough to publish 2 new manuals for us. One of them is a brand new skills training manual that is much more comprehensive and user-friendly than the first. And the other happens to be a companion manual that carries all of the handouts and worksheets for clients. And they really have made our lives, I think, a whole lot easier than the initial manuals were. So basically, at its core, DBT is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy that blends empathy and confrontation with core mindfulness skills that were derived directly from Zen Buddhism. At the heart of DBT lies this concept of dialectics, or the notion that reality consists of internal opposing forces that must be synthesized. The extreme thinking, behaviors, and emotions of borderline personality disorder, and arguably eating disorders and addictions, are interpreted as dialectical failures that the individual is polarized in and unable to move to synthesis. DBT is the vehicle that is designed to teach the synthesis to our clients. Well, how effective is it, you might be wondering? It's actually proven to decrease parasuicidal behaviors, treatment dropout rates, and inpatient hospital stays in particular. So in one study, they had a control group and then the sort of study group. So in the study group, 16.7% dropped out as compared to 50% in the control group. That's actually a 66% decrease in dropout rates. Now, in the study group, those folks had 8.46 hospital days, while the control group had 38.6 hospital days. So that's a 79% decrease in hospital days, which I think makes insurance companies very happy because it saves them a lot of money and arguably it saves a lot of hardship in the clients' lives as well. So eating disorders and addictive behaviors are inherently self-injurious by nature and can be seen as parasuicidal. I think we could probably all agree about that. They often function as a way to manage difficult and uncomfortable emotions, and it helps people cope with challenging lives. So that is to say that eating disorder symptoms, like binging and purging, which serves to numb or quell emotions, and restricting and losing weight, which serves to basically keep the mind busy and distract the person from thinking about her problems. For example, all that time that they spent tallying calories or exercising and figure out what they can and can't eat and how much they have to work out to work it off, that's all time spent not thinking about current pain and problems. Just like time spent thinking about where you're going to get money for drugs or how to hide the next drink or how to not go into withdrawal is time spent not dealing with the present. So in this way, all of those behaviors are really similar to BPD's self-destructive behaviors. In that respect, DBT is pretty easily tailored to the eating disorder and addiction populations. Now, DBT also comes with a set of 8 assumptions, and they're really geared towards preventing negativity and patient blaming. Because, as we can all appreciate, the risks involved in treating clearly borderline personality disorder patients who are frequently perpetually suicidal, but also our eating disorder clients and our addictive clients who have high risk for death, can get really frustrating when we're not making a lot of progress. And it can get easy to get into those negative patient blaming spaces. I don't know about any of you, but I've certainly spent time in other institutions where I have heard nursing staff or other staff members who have worked with challenging clients for a long period of time get really sort of denigrating about certain individuals. And it seems like it's always the eating disordered BPD and addiction populations that happens with. So part of what Linehan was trying to do is to get us out of that patient blaming negative headspace, because if you are, or if we are, blaming our clients, it's going to be really hard to help them. If we have a negative attitude towards them, it's going to be really hard to find that compassionate connection that they need to heal and that we need to do our best, I think. So this way, like DBT assumes that the patient is always trying her best at any given point in time, wants to change, and that his or her behavior is always understandable given the person's background and their set of present circumstances. And if you look at these 4 assumptions, they're all completely applicable to eating disorders and addicts. So clients are doing the best they can. Clients want to improve. They need to do better, try harder, and be more motivated to change. And clients may not have caused all of their own problems, but they are certainly responsible for fixing them anyway. And I think too, just as an aside, I think the fact that eating disorder clients and addiction clients happen to have traits that are very similar to borderline personality disorder. And I think that in and of itself also makes this a treatment modality that is really easy to adapt. So let's take a look again at 2 more assumptions out of the 8. So these are the assumptions 5 and 6. On the left-hand side is for borderline personality disorder, and the right-hand side is for eating disorder and addictions. Super simple, like you can adapt them just by switching out the diagnoses. And I think that when we look at them, we can agree that they're pretty true. Lives of suicidal borderline individuals are unbearably as they're currently being lived. Well, the lives of eating disorder and addicted individuals are also unbearable as they are currently being lived. And therapists treating borderline clients need support. I think most certainly we all agree that therapists treating eating disordered and addicted clients also really need some support. And these are the 2 final assumptions of DBT. With very little effort, the assumptions are easily applied to eating disordered and addicted populations. Clients must learn new behaviors in all relevant contexts, and clients cannot fail in DBT. I think that last one is of particular relief to our eating disorder patients who tend to want to be perfectionistic and very pleasing. When they figure out that they can't fail, they get pretty excited about that. Let's talk a little bit about how DBT's goals are divided. There's goals to increase and there's goals to decrease, or behaviors to decrease rather. So these are the goals to decrease behaviors, or particular behaviors. And they're fairly simple. On the left-hand side, again, you'll see the specific goals of DBT for borderline personality disorder. And the right-hand side, we're going to look at the goals and how they're easily adapted to the eating disorder and addicted population. So let's talk about interpersonal chaos for a moment. And when you think about binging and purging, restricting, compulsive exercise, drinking and drugging, all of those things can certainly lead to creating interpersonal chaos. Binging, purging, restrictive, and compulsive exercise is typically used to quell labile emotions and moods, which in some ways, I think, from a common sense standpoint, people sort of think like, well, doesn't that decrease interpersonal chaos if people are sort of numb and they're not having these hot reactive emotions that have become so characteristic of the BPT individuals that we treat? On the other hand, it's really challenging to be in a relationship with somebody who is numb all the time. Like that numbness actually serves to create some chaos in and of itself in a relationship. And very often, I often describe when somebody's in a relationship with someone with an eating disorder, the eating disorder itself is like this glass wall that really prevents a solid relational connection between the two people. Without question, addicts on a run absolutely have interpersonal chaos. Their lies increase. I was leading a group at one point in time where it was a multifamily group, and a wife was telling a story about her husband. They had a great relationship. He'd been sober for a while, but she says, when I think back at what our relationship was like when his addiction was active, and he had a pretty serious heroin addiction. He was a 4-gram a day user. She says, there was just every single thing that should have been simple was just filled with chaos. And she had one particular example while she was pregnant and got thirsty and really wanted some Gatorade, felt that she might be getting dehydrated and it was really important for her to get it. And her husband says, well, I'll go get it for you. And, he kind of took off to go down to the corner store and get her a bottle of Gatorade. Well, lo and behold, he doesn't come back for 90 minutes, and the store is like 90, seconds away by foot. And when he comes home, he walks through the door and he doesn't have her Gatorade in his hands. And so she's like, where's my Gatorade? And he says, oh, well, I went out to get you the Gatorade, and I went to the store and I bought the bottle of Gatorade. And then on my way there, I saw this homeless family. So I went to the store and I got the Gatorade. When I came back and I went back to this homeless family and started talking to them and felt terrible. So I gave them the Gatorade and they drank it. Then I had to take them to this homeless shelter because I felt terrible. They had a kid with them, and he was going on and on and on, making up this really elaborate story. And she says, I don't know why he just didn't say I drank the Gatorade. That kind of stuff right there creates some serious interpersonal chaos. It's pretty characteristic of addiction. And I think if we look at impulsivity, realistically, purging, stealing laxatives, getting angry and then deciding that I'm not going to eat today because I'm going to punish you somehow, tends to be coming from a really impulsive space. And also, addiction in general is pretty impulsive. For those of you who work with addicts, and I guess for those of you who don't, I'll explain, there's all sorts of things that happen. They go out with a friend, somebody offers them a drug that they've never used before. Oh, sure, I'll try that. Also, addicts are, not all of them, but many of them attend what are called Skittles parties. And Skittles, the candy, which are the sort of rainbow color of those chewy, pure sugar, basically. Well, in addiction, Skittles parties are everyone looks in their medicine cabinets and takes whatever prescription drugs that they happen to have in there, and they bring them to this party, and they dump all of those prescription bottles into a bowl and they mix them up, and people just take handfuls of them. That's pretty impulsive, especially if you don't know what you're taking, what it's going to do, and what happens when they're combined. Relatively risky, too. And then when you think about things like confusion about self and cognitive dysregulation, most eating disorder patients tell us that they don't really know who they are. And they certainly don't know who they are without their eating disorder. And a lot of them say they don't even want to know in case they don't like that person. And many of them will say they feel like they're nobody without their eating disorder. Addicts, on the other hand, are a little bit different, but similar. They carry a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and they're really highly defended, and very often are extremely afraid of living life without the protective shield of their drug of choice. They're not really sure about their self-worth. They're not really sure about much outside of, what they need to do to keep their addiction going and to keep themselves emotionally protected that way. So these are the goals of DBT to increase. And I'm just going to point out that they happen to also be known as the 4 skills training modules of DBT. And these are goals that are very easily adapted to both populations. They all need all 4 of these things. And I'm going to go a little more into detail when we talk about exactly what those skills training modules are. So let's talk about them briefly for a minute. The first is core mindfulness, and arguably this may actually be the most important because you can't change what you're not aware of. So this is a module that is assisting our clients in becoming aware of their thoughts and feelings, and that's something that they tend to avoid. Many of them are not particularly aware of their emotions, and a lot of them can't even identify or label their emotions. I mean, how many of us have had clients say, I just feel blech? Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but blech isn't really an easy to identify emotion. It could be disgusted or frustrated or who knows, but it doesn't have that clear label of happy, sad, frustrated, angry, whatever we can think of. And so with core mindfulness, clients are going to learn how to label their emotions and identify their emotions, as well as focus on what works in order to deal with emotions. And this is something that we call effectiveness in DBT. They also learn to take a non-judgmental stance about where they are, which is inherently difficult for our perfectionistic eating disorder patients. Emotion regulation is another module, and patients very often are either not aware of their feelings or really numb, or they can't label the distress they feel, and they'll use eating disorder symptoms or drugs and alcohol for relief. So the goals here are to understand emotions, to reduce emotional vulnerability, to be able to really let go of those painful emotions through mindfulness, or to even change emotions through opposite action. And this is a module that really explains the functions of emotions. That emotions are used to communicate, they're used to motivate, or their functions are to motivate actions, and they're also useful for self-validating. Interpersonal effectiveness is another module that patients will use eating disorder symptoms to communicate. And realistically, most of society really can't translate the complex, frightening language of eating disorders. So patients, or addiction for that matter, and patients really need to learn to develop an authentic voice. And this is part of the goal here. Having healthy relationships without sacrificing the self is very difficult for eating disorder and addiction patients, but it's taught explicitly in this model. Distress tolerance. Both sets of clients have a lot of trouble sitting with their feelings. It's very hard to tolerate anger and sadness in particular. So a lot of people with eating disorders will purge to relieve feelings, or they'll restrict to distract or to avoid or numb themselves. And people with addiction will use their drug of choice to achieve the same effects. And this module comes with numerous crisis survival skills that are incredibly helpful for them. Down at the bottom of this slide, you will see a website and course sites. And I put this on here because it happens to be a free online skills training course. It's for people, it's not for therapists, it's for our clients. And for those of you who live in cities, you probably don't have much trouble finding skills training courses to refer your clients to. Where I live up in New Hampshire, the only places really that do DBT tends to be the community mental health centers. It's not always easy to get clients in there. They typically won't take a lot of the clients that we have, because many of them you have to have all of your services done in that center, and it's not really appropriate sometimes for people with addiction and for eating disorders. And so then you kind of are floundering with this client that could really use the skills training and no place to send them. And this website has become the perfect solution in many ways because clients can work through it at their own pace. They can work through it with you. They can review their homework with you. But it is a great way for them to have access to the material. Now, the part that you have all been very patiently waiting for, and I thank you for your patience, is the experiential skill building part. I have been working on adapting DBT to eating disorders since 2000. That was, I think, the first time I actually really put it together. And I was back when I was directing the program at Hampstead Hospital up here in New Hampshire, and found that it just had such an amazing impact on clients' abilities to use the skills. And frankly, I think that people remember better what they do more than what they read or hear, especially if they are having fun while they're doing it. So really the whole experiential component is to make this sort of real life for them, to make it more user-friendly, and to make sure that people are having fun. And before we even get started in kind of transitioning to the experiential portion, it's really important to think about our own attitude as clinicians. You know, occasionally you can get some resistance from clients who don't want to learn something new or try something new or follow through with something. But our attitude going into it can be one of the most transformative parts of it. Like, it really does all start with you. When I do this, I try to sort of do a couple of things. I set my intention. Like, what is my intention? Well, I really want to teach my clients skills, and I really want to improve their life experience. And when I think about the possibility of teaching somebody skills that's going to improve the quality of their life, that makes me really excited, and I want to do it. And then I need to take action around that. And the action that I take is just being creative in my delivery. And there's so much stuff we can do here. And what I really do want to do is inspire you to be creative. I'm definitely going to give you a lot of ideas today that you can expand on, but I really, really want to reinforce to just have fun with it. Mindfulness is the key in all of DBT and in all of skills, really. And if you look at this progression, this is sort of how Linehan, it's not sort of, it's exactly what Linehan has said when I've taken her trainings, in how you should teach DBT. You should start with core mindfulness, then you move to emotion regulation, you go back to core mindfulness, you go to interpersonal effectiveness skills and back to core mindfulness, on to distress tolerance and back to core mindfulness. You know, if clients aren't mindful, they will not even notice when they have to apply skills, and they will have no idea which skills to apply. In a group on skills coaching, this is just sort of an example. I was doing a group that was basically, I gave them a bunch of scenarios where they had to pick the skill that would be most effective. This is just sort of an example. And the one example was the person sits down at lunch and there's way too much on her plate. It's more than her meal plan, and she starts to panic. What would the appropriate skill be, or what are some appropriate skills be that would be effective in that situation? And the group was adamant that what they needed to use was opposite emotion action. And I was sort of like, okay, explain that. And so they're like, well, you know, I'm panicked. I don't want to eat it, but I got to eat it, so I just eat it, and that's what I do. And I'm, you know, what I said was, wow, I kind of feel like if you could do that, you wouldn't be here, right? Like if you could just eat and not have any problem with it, you could just use opposite emotion action all the time. But realistically, if you eat that and you really believe that it's too much and you've been panicked over it, you're only going to panic when it's in your stomach and you're feeling probably even more full than usual, because the stomach is a muscle and you've tensed up because you're anxious. So if you're really mindful and you can really look at what is happening in that situation, you could probably get a lot further with checking the facts. Is there really more food on my plate right now? Or have I been hyper focused on it and it just appears bigger than it really is? And say that I do check the facts and I discover that maybe a couple of my exchanges are a little bigger. Well, then I could check the facts around thermogenesis and metabolism. And for those of you who are not familiar with the term thermogenesis, it's the idea that our metabolisms are a lot like a thermostat in the house, where, you know, if we set the thermostat at 70 and the house heat falls to 68, the heat turns on and heats the house back up to 70. And if it's in the summertime, and the heat goes up, or the house temperature goes up to 74, the air conditioning turns on and cools it back off to 70. Well, our metabolisms do the same thing. If we eat a little more than what we need, our metabolism speeds up to burn it off. If we eat less than we need, our metabolisms slow down to conserve energy. But in order to figure all of that out, you need to be mindful. And so this idea of constantly reinforcing mindfulness and practicing is really the key to the success of our clients' ability to successfully transfer and apply these skills in their daily lives. So hence, we're just going to be sort of focusing on practice, 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 and mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. So in core mindfulness, there are 3 primary states of mind. There is our rational mind, which is the intellectual and logical, and many people refer to it as kind of the cool or cold sort of side of ourselves. And then emotion mind is where facts are very often distorted. It's a hot, reactive, we all know what that is. We deal with it all the time, right? And then wise mind adds a sort of intuitive knowing to the emotional experience and logical analysis. It's really the integration of the rational and emotional minds. It's kind of taking the middle road. So it's where the person is really aware of their emotions and logic. It's able to guide the person to act in their best interest, even though that may be hard. So wise mind holds the fact that the person knows she needs to eat and is afraid to eat. And wise mind then assists the person in selecting a coping skill that allows her to eat despite that fear. And this really is one module where I feel like we do need to take time to talk about the concepts before we really apply a lot of the experiential activities. Well, let's kind of look at how we could present wise mind in a way that makes sense to people. So if you look at this, this is actually a Venn diagram. You can see the 2 big circles. Here's one circle over here, and here's another circle over here. And you will see on the right-hand side, this is emotion mind over here. And actually, let me point one other thing out. You see this outline right here? This is an automobile. You've got these little tires. I know it's very crude, but I had to draw it in Microsoft Word. And let me tell you, drawing an automobile in Microsoft Word is not the easiest thing in the world. These, I believe, I included in the handouts. If not, please feel free to email me and I will send them to you so you don't have to draw an automobile in Microsoft Word by yourself. I'll have saved you that problem or those troubles. So let's start over on the right-hand side. When you're looking at clients, you can just sort of review it with them. Like, this is emotion mind. It's where, feelings are going to tell you that there's something worth paying attention to, and feelings motivate us to take action. And if you think about it in terms of the car, it's actually where the fuel tank is located, and it provides energy. And then there's reasonable mind over here. It's the logical side that helps us think and evaluate and make plans. It helps us kind of take a step back and remember how we talked about the fact that it's cool and detached. Well, when it comes to the automobile, it also happens to be where the engine is, and that provides some order, some analytics, right? But in the center here is the third one, and that's wise mind. It can see the whole picture, and it's aware. And it is really very much like the steering wheel of the car. It is what is going to give us some direction. It gives us balance and meaning. It tells us how to respond in order to be effective. It helps us be involved and be aware. It's the good decisions that are made here. And when you think about it in terms of the car, if you have just the fuel, you're not going anywhere. If you have just the engine, you're not going anywhere. You need both of those things, and then you need a mechanism to steer yourself in the right direction. And steering yourself in the right direction is wise mind. And then to kind of help them put this together, you can do this individually, you can do this in a group. One of my favorite ways to use this worksheet is to actually make it a little more experiential and have people, that's the whole point of this, right? Is to have people start filling out the worksheet. You start an emotion of mind and basically identify something that is important, something that they are dealing with. Sometimes I will give them a situation, and we'll talk about situation cards a little bit later, so I won't spend much time explaining what those are right this second, but I might give them a situation. But if someone has it and wants to volunteer it, then we use that situation and we have them write it out. So identify what's important, what feelings come up in this situation, and what impulses do you have? And then look over at reasonable mind. That's the second step. Take a breath, list some options that you have in this situation. What resources can you draw on? And what are some things that actually might make the situation worse? That helps people look at side one and side two to come to side three. What are the best options? Now we know about the impulses. We know what things might make it worse. We know the feelings. We know the resources. We have options. We know what's important. So what is the best option and what skills would be helpful? And what I like to do with this is once they have it sort of mapped out, I like them to role play. If I can have a group of people, I'll have one person play emotion mind, one person play reasonable mind, and I'll have them talk back and forth in this situation. Emotion mind's like, here's what's going on, and this is really making me super angry. And then reasonable mind is like, yeah, well, take a step back here for a second. I mean, think about the source. Think about like who is saying the stuff to you that's making you upset. And they go back and forth for a period of time. And then the third person steps in as wise mind who says, I've been listening to you two for a while now, and let me tell you what I think we should do. And when you actually make that sort of live in a skit, they remember how to use it. They remember how to reason through it, how to look at both sides of their mind, and how to figure out where wise mind is and use it. And then the other people that are in the group remember it as well, because basically whenever we have a story, right, not just instructions. If you are looking at just this worksheet and listening to me talking right now, what I'm doing is activating your left brain or the left hemisphere of your brain. When I tell you a story that is complete with details and feelings and visuals, then I activate the right hemisphere of your brain. And that helps you to be more aware of your internal processes, and it helps you make connections that you can't make with just the left hemisphere of your brain. So clients sitting in a group who are listening to the emotion mind and reasonable mind have this conversation, sometimes even an argument, and then having this third wise mind person step in to solve the problem. Remember it because it's vivid and it tends to be very descriptive. If you aren't in a group and you are just in an individual session, you can do it with your client. I like to let my client do the voice that she's strongest in first, and then I will role model and play the weaker side of her. So if she tends to be really emotional, then I'll let her play that side and I'll be reasonable. And then we'll switch it and she'll be reasonable and I'll be the emotion mind. And then we figure out wise mind together. But it's pretty helpful because I think they really do learn it much more thoroughly than when we're just kind of doing worksheets and explaining or teaching it at a whiteboard. Now let's take a look. There's two types of mindfulness skills that we need to teach our clients. So there's 3 what skills, and that's observe our emotions. We want to describe or put words on our emotions and the situation itself. And then we want to participate and be one mindfully in the moment where we're kind of entering into the experience. A great thing, and then there's, these how skills that you can see down here too, like how are we going to be mindful? Well, we're going to be non-judgmental. We are going to be one mindfully in the moment. And certainly we want to be effective. One of the things I really find helpful is to incorporate meditation and guided imagery to really assist in developing skills to observe and just be one mindfully in the moment. And then, sort of ask the person or coach the person to describe and put words on. And so one of the things that I want to do right now is just kind of walk you through literally a 1-minute white light chakra clearing meditation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the chakra system, it is essentially an energy system that runs through your body. They follow the rainbow colors, and it starts at the base of your spine, goes all the way up to the crown of your head. And they are literally rainbow colors, like starting with red at the tail and then it ends in purple at the top of the crown of your head. So I'm just going to use this as an example from time to time in other parts of this presentation. So I'm going to walk you through this meditation. So if you just take a breath and close your eyes and relax for a minute, consider this a little break for you in the middle of your day. Take a breath in and just see and feel a stream of sparkling white light entering through the top of your head, illuminating what is known as your crown chakra, the energy center that is focused on knowing your truth. It looks like a beautiful purple fan rotating in a clockwise direction. Just see the sparkling white light getting brighter and brighter. As you're looking at this beautiful purple fan, you may see some dark spots, some smudges, and as the white light gets brighter and brighter, it cleanses the chakra and removes all barriers and blocks to accessing your inner wisdom. And see and feel this beautiful stream of sparkling light move downward, settling in your third eye, which is located slightly above and between your eyebrows. It's a beautiful indigo blue fan spinning in a clockwise direction. And just look for a moment and see if you notice any dark spots or smudges, any blocks or fears around seeing your truth. Then you notice this gorgeous sparkling white crystal light getting brighter and brighter as it cleanses away all fears and blocks related to seeing your truth. This gorgeous sparkling white light slides down, settling in your light blue throat chakra. You see this gorgeous light blue little fan spinning in a clockwise direction, and you just scan it briefly, looking for dark spots, blocks, and fears that are related to speaking your truth. And you see this gorgeous stream of sparkling light illuminating the chakra brightly, removing all blocks around communication and speaking your truth. The light gently moves downward, settling in your emerald green heart chakra, the energy center that concerns thoughts and beliefs around love and relationships. And you're looking for little dark spots and smudges or fears or blocks in that area. And the light just gets brighter and brighter and cleanses away all fears and beliefs that keep you from enjoying your love and that keep you from giving and receiving love. The light slips down a little bit further and it settles in your solar plexus. And this chakra is spinning in a clockwise direction and shining like a little bright yellow sun. You search it briefly, looking for any dark spots or blocks or fears. And you notice a sparkling white light getting brighter and brighter, illuminating the chakra, just releasing all of your struggles concerning power and control. And the sparkling stream of white light moves further down, settling just 4 inches above your navel, below your navel, my apologies, and your orange sacral chakra that is spinning and sparkling like an orange jewel that compasses your appetites and desires. And you look around for some dark spots and smudges. The light cleanses away all blocks and fears and concerns, allowing you to be aligned with an endless supply of love and desires that are balanced just right for you. The streaming white light moves downward still, settling in the base of your spine in your glowing ruby red root chakra. The light brightens, cleansing away all fears related to money, security, and safety. See this beautiful ruby red fan completely illuminated and cleansed. The white light having fully cleansed and balanced all 7 chakras so they are all the same size and all spinning in a clockwise direction. They're all sparkling and glowing. You see them as you look at the base of your spine, going up to the crown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And this column of white light now is illuminating all of them at the same time. The column gets wider, spreading out through your body, entering into your auric field, dissolving away all fears and blocks in your auric field. And then you feel this light coming together in a ball that centers near your stomach area. And this ball of crystal white light sparkles and glows. This is your true essence. You can increase its size anytime simply with your intention. You can see and feel it illuminate your body and aura, filling you with love and peaceful energy. Each breath that you take energizes and rebalances your chakras, leaving you immersed in your glowing true self. And take another breath and open your eyes and come back into your computer screen, actually. And hopefully that felt rejuvenating. But what I do, I often will do that with clients. That's actually, they tell me it's one of their favorites because it also hits on many of their core issues and helps them get a sense of relief and mastery and freedom. But I ask them then to use some of their observation and description skills to tell me what that experience was like for them. What did they feel in their body? What did they see when they were looking at the different chakras? Did one seem like it had more dark spots than others? Now, what sensations did they feel? And really kind of work on helping them to give me as rounded a description of the experience as they possibly can. I think arguably core mindfulness skills are the most difficult for our clients to master. When you think about patients using eating disorder symptoms, for example, to just avoid feeling, and they really avoid being mindful of their emotions and problems, and they'll tell you, like, I don't want to feel anything uncomfortable. And addiction clients are no different. Like, I don't want to feel any feelings. And it's important that they have to practice these skills really often. And, as I said, practice, 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 right? I have another analogy for you that I find really effective to use with clients, and I call it my sneaker analogy, actually. A lot of clients get really frustrated if they use a skill and they're like, that didn't work, or they didn't really apply it correctly. We didn't have a chance to coach them thoroughly or something like that. They get super frustrated and forget it. I'm never going to use it again. And it's kind of like, well, you got to practice skills for them to be useful. And so I always tell them my sneaker analogy, which is, I have a pair of sneakers and they're super comfortable. But after a while, you either start to get a hole in the toe, or the sole starts coming apart, or the sole's worn down. And the reality is they're just old, and you need to go buy some new sneakers. You look down and you're like, oh, these are not working for me anymore. So you go to Olympia Sports or Dick's Sporting Goods or wherever. You find a pair of sneakers and you try them on. You're like, oh my God, these are them. They're so comfortable that I'm going to wear them out of the store. You take your old sneakers in your box. You've got your new sneakers on your feet. You're so excited about them. About 2 hours later, there's like a blister forming just below your ankle and in your heel. And they're really uncomfortable. They don't feel very good. So you take them off and you put your old sneakers back on. And you're just like, oh my God, that feels so good. Thank God I took those new sneakers off. These are so much more comfortable. And you wear old sneakers for a couple of days and then you look down again and you think, ugh, I really need to just put my new sneakers on. These look terrible. My toe is starting to come out the hole on the top. The sole is just flapping when I walk. These don't even look good. You put your new ones on. Why did I ever take these off? These feel pretty good. Yeah, these are pretty good. I don't wear them around. Actually, I got them on for like 6 or 7 hours, and oh no, they're starting to rub a little bit. So I take them off again, put my old ones on. Oh, thank God, huge relief. But then, after a shorter period of time, you look down, you're like, I can't stand looking at these old sneakers. They look terrible. So you put the new ones back on. And pretty soon you're wearing the new ones for longer periods of time and the old sneakers shorter periods of time. Pretty soon you're just wearing your new sneakers. Well, the old sneakers are the eating disorder or the addiction, and the new sneakers are the new coping skills. And I feel like when you give them that analogy, everybody understands it. They've all had that experience. And it also makes them understand that it's really normal to go back and forth. You're not going to just decide to recover and never have any problems and never use another behavior. It's pretty rare that that ever happens, right? So we want to really provide them with a lot of activities to practice. And a couple of things, if you look up at, some things that you can do to practice what skills, there's an experiential where you give them a raisin, a potato chip, and a chocolate chip or a Hershey's Kiss, it doesn't matter. And what you do is you have them put one at a time, put a raisin in their mouth, they hold it there for a minute. And then then they can chew and swallow it or spit it out, whatever. But then they need to be able to tell you what they noticed, what it felt like, how it changed. And then you do the potato chip, put that in their mouth for a minute, which is actually not that pleasant, believe it or not. They get soggy by the end and spread across your tongue. It's not all that pleasant. But having them describe that to you with descriptors that doesn't have words like, oh, it's disgusting, but, well, it was salty and crisp, and then it started to melt and break apart. You can really work on their description skills that way. And of course, melted chocolate is relatively dreamy for most people, somewhat anxiety provoking, but if you're using chocolate chips, I find the eating disorder clients do just fine with it. So there's lots of opportunities where you can coach in these types of skills. Like take, for example, meals and snacks. When you're in the context of a program, like the program here at CDC, we do therapeutic meals where we can coach them. But if you're an outpatient therapist, go ahead and try having lunch or dinner or a risk snack with your clients and coach them in observing how they feel. Coach them in describing mindful eating. There's no calorie counting, no ruminating over fat grams or what the food might be doing to their bodies. I often will tease them and say, I promise you the pizza is not going to make you sprout a third leg. You will only have two legs. And the, ice cream or brownie is not going to miraculously pop out of the left side of your thigh in a square like some of them think is really going to happen. Let's focus on the taste and the texture. Let's focus on breathing. Let's focus on enjoying this whole entire moment. I also ask them to do things like use Post-it notes all over the house. The refrigerator, bathroom are great places to have Post-it notes that have reminders to breathe, to be present, to check in with their feelings and their thoughts. I feel blank. I need blank, to prompt them to fill in those situations. Really good mindfulness prompts. There we go. Could not find that word today. Another thing that I think is really helpful, I kind of wish that the webcam was working for this so I could do it for you, but I will do my best at using my describing skills to describe how to do this to you. And that is, what we want to do is help them to get unstuck from the judgments that we make. And we make so many judgments during the course of a day that we're not even aware of all of them. So what I like to do, whether it's in a group or if it's in an individual session, it doesn't really matter. If it's in a group and I have a co-leader, what I love to do is sort of create this atmosphere between myself and the other group facilitator that looks like we don't like each other very much and that we're thinking some not so very pleasant things by using body language and mannerisms. So, for example, I might stand very straight, fold my arms across my chest, look at my co-leader, make a disgusted face, which I know is a pejorative term, but bear with me. And then maybe I'll roll my eyes at her or make noises like I might wrinkle my nose, I might tap my foot, I might walk away, I might walk over to somebody else in the room and smile and nod my head. That might suggest that I am approving of them or something along those lines. Then after, not even like more than 30 seconds of doing that, I'll say, I want people to describe what I was doing. And invariably, clients will say, well, you really don't like so-and-so. You were ticked off. You were angry. You were disgusted. You were, they're basically projecting and making assumptions and judgments about what they thought I was feeling. Somebody who has been trained in DBT, like most clinicians, for example, and people who have graduated from the program would be able to say, you folded your arms across your chest, you rolled your eyes, you turned sideways, you tapped your foot, you stomped your foot, you smiled, you nodded your head. Those are all great descriptions because nobody is in my head but me, and none of them know what I was really thinking. And the reality is, I don't dislike my coworker. I was having a lot of fun, and what I was really thinking was, this is going to be great because they're all going to think I can't stand her, and that's what they're going to say, and it's not true. Just as an example. Another thing that you can do is have your clients make placemats. And this is an example of one that was made in the program. And the idea of this is this person chose to do a collage to remind her of the things that were important to her. So I don't worry about things I can't control. Something wonderful will happen today. I've chosen to be happy because it's good for my health. Other people will actually write things on their placemats that will remind them to be mindful, that will remind them to do things like breathe, my body needs nourishment, I love my body and I trust its wisdom, thermogenesis rocks. There's all sorts of things that people will write on these. And it's super simple because all you need is construction paper and magazines or markers. They can write, they can draw, they can paste things on them. And then you can take them to Staples and have them laminated for like 50 cents. It's super inexpensive and very simple and extremely helpful. If people don't feel like making placemats, because I definitely have had clients say, well, I can't see the placemat because my plate's on top of it. Fair enough. We also use colored index cards, and we have them write positive affirmations or reminders basically that help them focus on nourishing their body, being in the moment, enjoying their food, enjoying the experience, and then placing those index cards around their plate. The beautiful thing about index cards is that you can take them with you wherever you go. Another idea that I really have enjoyed doing with clients is making these cups. I got these at the dollar store, and there's another one that I'll show you in a minute. They're obviously $1 a piece, and you can write on them with Sharpies, with magic markers. Sharpies are great because they don't wash off when they clean them. So this person chose to write the Serenity Prayer on it, as well as some just affirmations around the top. Now, the reason that I chose cups is twofold, because all of our clients like to drink a lot of coffee, and often they like to drink water as well. So it's a way of reminding them throughout the day. You know, there's not a specific reason. These don't have to be used just at meals. They can be used any time of the day. But there's another reason. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto, who was an integrative medicine doctor in Japan. He studied the effect of positivity on water crystals, and it is phenomenally interesting. The website is at the top where you can read more about it. You can look at a lot of his water crystals, but basically what he did was he exposed water to frequencies of classical music and heavy metal music. He exposed water to words, and he exposed them to prayer. He also, there's something else, and I'm not pulling it out of my brain. My apologies at the moment. But this is what I want to show you. So what he did was after he exposed the water, he would flash freeze it and look at it under a microscope. So take a look at these, right? This first one up here in the upper left-hand corner, this was a glass of water that had the word truth taped to it. Also had somebody hold it and say truth. And when he froze it, this was the shape that the molecule took. It's this gorgeous snowflake. And then over here, we have this beautiful crystal that had the word thank you on it. And this other gorgeous crystal that had the word wisdom. So there was look at how just they're symmetrical. They're just beautiful. Look what happened when you disgust me got taped onto the cup. He flash froze the crystals, and this is what it looked like. There is no crystal. It actually looks disgusting. It is just misshapen. It is chaotic. It's discolored. And then this one over here, you fool, like that's not even, it looks like it tried to be a crystal right here in the middle, and it's just like all broken apart. And then evil is just kind of looks like a black hole. Now, the reason that I show them this is because he's done this study multiple times in different languages, in languages that he didn't understand, in order to look at them under the microscope and to be able to say, I don't know what you said, but this was positive and this was negative. Our bodies are like 70-something% water. So if we are running around and we are saying nasty things to ourselves in our heads, which of these, sort of water molecules do you want floating around in your body? I know I prefer the top row to be in my body, and most people do as well. I also, to sort of drive this home, the importance of monitoring your self-talk and being mindful of your self-talk, is something called the rice experiment. You take organic rice, it needs to not be GMO, preferably, because it works better with organic. Cook it, divide it into 2 containers, keep a little water in there. Put love on one container of rice and the word hate on the other. You can pick the love rice up every day and just give it some love, like, oh my God, you're such an amazingly beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful rice. Thank you so much. And then the one that says hate on it, you stupid rice, or whatever you want to say to it. The one that actually has hate on it and the one that you've been mean to will get moldy faster. It will get moldy before the one that has love on it. And when you show your clients these pictures and these slides and you explain this experiment to them and take them to the website and go take a peek at it yourselves, they really understand the importance of positive self-talk, of changing their thinking, and they get really excited about doing cups. These are actually, these are 3 examples of travel mugs that we got from the dollar store. Again, these are Sharpies that they use to decorate them, and it's all positive words, forming those beautiful positive little crystals. But better yet, every time they go take a drink, they see a positive word. And that is a great way of helping to shape clients' thinking and to be more mindful. Another experiential activity for people, this is great for addictions. And so the first one is just, sober breathing. Stop where you are. Observe what you're feeling. What are the physical sensations and cravings? Take a breath, take another and another. Now expand your awareness. We want to think through the drink, as they would say in AA, or play through the tape, as we sometimes say in DBT. What would happen if you went to that place, that urge or that craving that you're having? What would happen if you decide to purge? What would happen if you decide to take that drug? Well, we all know if we think through the drink and play through the tape that it's going to happen more and more and more and more and more and be completely out of control, and our lives are going to be in shambles. So we want to respond mindfully. And that it's just a really super simple tool to use. It's really easy for people to remember. Let's talk a little bit about interpersonal effectiveness to switch gears for you. This is a module that assists our clients in using their voices to meet their needs, to resolve conflict, and to negotiate. Like in Linehan's module, this is always didactic in nature. There's a lot of whiteboard usage in this one, but really I feel like the creativity and sensitivity and arguably intelligence of the eating disordered and addicted population necessitates a different approach. So let's change it to one that's more patient-driven and creative and experiential. Using skits and artwork and stories and game show and patient-created board games instead of lecture and homework assignments, it really allows our clients to apply the skills to real-life situations that are important to them. And I've got to tell you, like, their creativity is phenomenal. I've seen some great DBT Monopoly games, for example. And if we use a group exercise that requires collaborations, we're actually forcing them to use skills in the process of learning skills. And it requires patients to practice skills. Like by performing a skit or playing a game or presenting artwork, they're actually practicing those skills, and it's fun for them. So skits and games and artwork affords the greatest opportunity for in vivo coaching for us as clinicians. And Linehan emphasizes that we have to coach patients so that they can master the skill and then apply it successfully. If you don't have a lot of time and you know you'd want to do something experiential, fastest, easiest way you could make something experiential is to take the fast, dear man, and give skills and I should probably stop just really briefly for people who don't know what they are. Fast is taking care of yourself in a communication. It's being fair. It's no apologies, sticking to your values and being truthful. That's so I can maintain my own integrity. Actually, let me flip it over here for 1 second so you can see it over here, how this works. On the right-hand side, it shows the give skill, which is how I can take care of the relationship so the other person can have positive feelings about me and my message. That's being gentle, acting interested, validating their point of view, not necessarily not agreeing with them, but validating, I understand how you feel that way, and using an easy manner. Meanwhile, in the center, Dear Man is how you get what you want. It's describe, express, appear confident, assert, reinforce, be mindful, appear confident, and negotiate. Let me go backwards there. Sorry about that. But I thought, so you can hand those out to people and you can say, you have 30 minutes to figure out how you're going to teach this skill to everyone else in the room. And then you can go around and coach each group as you're listening to what their ideas are and making sure that they're understanding it and getting it the right way. If certain people have certain strengths, I may specifically assign them to create a skit or to do a specific art project. And when you really know your clients well, you can have specific examples. They really have a lot of fun with this, where they can fall asleep in lectures sometimes, or, when you're doing too much work at the whiteboard. And there's some great sort of worksheets that have the description of what fast, Dear Man, and give is. What I really like to do, though, is I create these things called situation cards. And I have in the handouts that you can download today, there's examples of situations for you. But I've compiled over time just a stack of index cards with situations that tend to be really common. And I have changed them around so that you can use them with a group or you can use them with an individual in your individual therapy sessions. So for example, let's look at one. This one says you could have 3 to 6 people needed, but you could actually also just do it individually in a one-to-one session. But here's the situation. You arrive home after a long day and your parents announce that the whole family is going out for Chinese food. You've been doing very well with your eating, but you like time to plan out your meals in order to follow your meal plan and stay on track. You haven't had Chinese food for years. It's one of your risk foods, and you begin to panic. Have 2 people play a conversation between emotion mind and reasonable mind. Have a third person step in to be wise mind and decide how to handle it with interpersonal effectiveness skills, distress tolerance, and emotion regulation skills. One person uses these skills to talk with the mother and father. So that's one scenario, but you can also take the same situation and have 3 people, like, okay, play the mother, the father, and the client, and the client needs to use Dear Man. And you can even assign the mother to be the person in charge of give, and have the client also explain how they employed the fast skill in that interaction. Also gives you a shot at really doing some great live coaching with that person on how to apply the skill. For people with addiction, this one is in your packets. I can't remember how many scenarios I did, but it's quite a few for you. Here's one for addiction. You can use it for up to 4 people. It can even be just 2 people. You've been friends for a long time. You got clean together. You've been clean for 8 months now and doing really well. In the past 2 weeks, however, one of your friends has started using occasionally and going to meetings high. You want this friend to get help, and you also want to protect your own recovery and minimize being triggered. Which skills would you use and why? Which skills would you use if your friend gets defensive? Role play the conversation to tell your client that, or to tell your friend that you are concerned about him or her, and use Dare Man, Fast, and Give. What skills will you use when your client or when your friend gets defensive? Role play the conversation. When you're done, explain in detail the skills that you used. Just as an example, really wonderful to have a stack of cards that you can use, because you can pull them out of a stack, while you're sitting in an individual session and just kind of role play together. Sometimes if, a client's having trouble with a parent, for example, I'll say, well, all right, you play the parent, I'll play you, to just role model how the skill could be applied. And then we switch it around. And it's just a great way to kind of coach. So some other ideas, let's look at emotion regulation. Observing and describing from core mindfulness is actually the key to understanding emotions, and it's super difficult for someone who can't recognize or label emotions, as we discussed a little earlier. So this module really gives patients a whole list of words and situations to just teach them feeling recognition. I know in the original skills training manual, it was like on page 150. I cannot recall. I don't have the second one right here with me to look for you. Patients learn through this module that it's not weak or taboo to let others know how they feel. And honestly, like when they do say things like, well, I feel like I can't cry, I have to be put together all the time, it's not okay to show emotion, I just try to point out, like, you're attempting to do this all the time when you're acting out in your eating disorder or addiction symptoms. Like really restricting, being too thin, or binging and purging is conveying the message of, I hate myself and my life, I need help, I'm really hurting. Unfortunately, as we discussed earlier, it's also not a language that most people understand. And for people who think that showing feelings is weak, I like to turn that around a little bit and say, well, you know what? I think that showing emotions is really scary for you. And so for you to actually do something that's scary would be being strong. Acting out in your eating disorder behaviors or acting out with your addiction to avoid feeling and to look strong is actually taking the easy way out. Just kind of manipulating their value system a little bit, I guess. And there's all sorts of little experiential activities that you can do. The please skill is really about taking good care of your body and reducing emotional vulnerability. It's about treating your physical illness, eating balanced meals, not abusing medications or taking medications appropriately, getting enough sleep. That's sort of the conventional skill. Now, Fulton State Hospital wrote a very user-friendly manual back in 2004, and they adapted, well, they just basically changed the acronym from please to strong, because for those of you who have the manual, you know that please was a huge stretch for that particular acronym, because, the PL comes from the P in physical, and the L happens to come from the L in physical. It's not easy for clients to remember this one, although they know that it's about reducing emotional vulnerability and taking care of themselves. Strong was just a little bit easier to remember. So we asked them to practice that, treating physical illness and balance their eating and avoiding mood-altering drugs and balancing their sleep and getting exercise is iffy for the eating disorder population, but we talk about exercise sometimes as just sort of mindful yoga stretching, which most people can do. And then there's opposite emotion action. So, for example, we like to brainstorm about these in some of the group settings too. So, what is an opposite emotion action if you're sad? Like maybe watching a funny movie or playing lively music. What is an opposite action for anger? There's also great examples on Linehan's website. There's a huge handout on what opposite actions there are for anger and frustration and sadness. It's pretty good. So the idea is, you also want to do what you're afraid of over and over and over again. A really great resource, I probably should have put it on the side for you, but there's a website called ilovedbt.com/DBT-handouts-worksheets. Fantastic resources on that website. Really great handouts, beautiful worksheets, wonderful diary cards. And then another one for emotion regulation that I love to use is urge surfing. So we're going to, the altered a little bit from feelings that borderline personality experiences to urges that are tougher for people with eating disorders and addictions. We want to coach them by telling them to observe, to step back, to get unstuck and to really experience the urge like a wave coming and going. We don't want to block it. We don't want to suppress it. We don't want to get rid of it or push it away. I mean, I know that they actually do want to push it away, but it comes back to bite them if they don't deal with it in the present. So we want to encourage them not to hold on to it and not to amplify it and not to act on it. And sometimes it's helpful to remember times that you felt differently. And it's really the most difficult skill to master, but once they do, they really feel a huge sense of accomplishment and strength. And they can write down the steps so they can read it on their own. But there's this, I like using this as a model for people. So this is a model of urge surfing to explain it. So see down here in this line where it says baseline, that is when the person doesn't have any particular emotion. They're just kind of, it's at the place that you're at when you're just kind of going through your day. Now over here is where it says trigger. It's important to remember that this trigger can be immediate or it can be 24 or 48 hours in advance, like before the urge starts to build. So anyway, if you're coming up, here's where the urge is building on this side. And it's going to go and build all the way up to this point that I'm calling the choice point. This is that place where they feel like they are holding on by their bloody fingernails and they're really white knuckling it. And they have to pretty much sit on their hands to not do anything because the urge is so strong. If they act out, say it's an urge to purge what they just ate. There's all this anxiety about who knows what, whatever the risk food was, right? If they choose to purge, what's going to happen is they're going to come right back down here to baseline. It's just probably with, residual feelings of shame and guilt. But arguably, all this pressure that they felt up here is released down here. Now, if they do nothing at all and just ride this wave, this is what happens, right? They're going to come all the way back down. And I ask clients, I say, what do you notice between here and here? What's the difference? And at first they say, well, nothing. It's, I'm in baseline. I'm like, yeah, but, the difference between baseline here and baseline here is time. And what we need to do is fill that time with our coping skills. So I'm going to give you some really great examples of a coping bank and a crisis survival kit to use during this period of time. I also tell them that this is a really great model to use to just think about how recovery works in general. Because in the beginning of treatment, we're really working over on this side of the curve. We're really working on building coping skills so that they can avoid these urges, so we can figure out more about these triggers. So when we fill this side with coping skills, I tell them, if you are up here and you can use your crisis survival kit or coping bank, which we will talk about in a second, and after going through all of that and you've used up, 60 to 90 minutes and you still want to act on your urge, I guess go ahead and do so. And if you don't, you're going to feel amazing because you've surmounted it. But either way, I want you to go through and answer these questions. Has anything upsetting happened? If so, what? Who is involved? Who have I spent time with? What emotions did I experience? Where have I spent my time? What have I thought about? And did I have memories or flashbacks? Because we're going to learn about the triggers that way. Once we know what the triggers are, we can formulate this phenomenal plan for how they're going to take care of themselves when they're exposed to the trigger. So, for example, I had one client who was purging multiple times a day, and very often she was purging while she was driving in the car, which was pretty scary when I think about it. And by doing this about 10 times, we had enough information that showed that when she was angry, that's when she was going to have an intense urge to purge. Initially, we thought, the initial data came in, it was looking like every time she was exposed to her mom that she was going to have some trouble, but really it was anger. And I think for many of our clients, feelings tend to be their biggest triggers. So we make this plan for what she can do when she's angry, how to take care of herself differently so that she's not ending up in this spot up here. And of course, it's this beautiful plan. She goes off, it fails like it always does. And that's okay, because every time the plan fails, then we get information about what the core issues are that we can work on in the rest of our therapy to resolve. And over time, this curve starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until this curve isn't even here, because the urges are gone and we are living functionally in skillful ways. And we don't need these kinds of behaviors anymore. And I think that just that visual helps them understand it and conceptualize it a lot. And it gives us a lot of data, which is really helpful. So another great thing that I found very helpful is all of our clients has a smartphone, seems like. No matter who they are, they have a smartphone. So we might as well use them to our advantage. You don't have to buy an app, but you can. If you don't want to use an app, I call it my do-it-yourself method, where clients will literally drop their cell phones on my lap sometimes, and I go into their calendar and I will insert skill suggestions as an appointment in their calendar, and it will pop up. So like there'll be an alert 5 minutes before. And if I know what's coming up and what they might be struggling with, I can strategically in their weekly calendar place skill reminders. I can also insert homework reminders as appointments. I can also set alarms that reminds them to practice a particular mindfulness skill, or that asks them to take an inventory of what skills they've used in the course of the day. Excuse me. And there's also a website called dbtselfhelp.com. I would also add that ilovedbt.com is a great website to add in there as well. Fantastic ways to use the cell phones of clients. People who want more formal apps, there's apps that are made for iPhones and Androids, so like DBT 911. Recoveryrecord.com is actually eating disorder specific. Sober Tool is addiction specific. You can see all of these. DBT Self-Help is $8.99. Jury's out on if it's really worth $10, but Meeting Finder, that one's great when people really just need to be with people. You can find a 12-step meeting anywhere in the country with Meeting Finder app, and it's free. PTSD Coach is an awesome app. If you've never used it, please go take a peek at it. It's really wonderful. It has people take a look at what's going on. They can rate their distress tolerance or their distress level. It will offer them skill suggestions. It will tell them if they need to call someone. It's a great app. And then here's a couple on the bottom of just iPhone onlys, like the Diary Card, DBT Review, and iRecovery. Here is just an example, a couple screenshots from some apps. This is Recovery Record. This was a client from actually quite a long time ago. You can see on this column like time, food, and drink that they ate, where they were, whether or not they binged, if they purged or not, and what thoughts they were having. So you can see I went to Barnes & Noble's after my psychiatrist appointment, switched to 40 milligrams of Celexa. Now I wish I'd just gone back to my dorm because I want to cry. I'm anxious about dinner. I'm babysitting, and we'll be eating dinner together. I don't know what food his mom will leave us with. And then there's this whole inventory over here, that you can read. The updated version of Recovery Record now allows you to leave comments. It's just very helpful in general. This is Sober Tool, the one that I had mentioned in the previous slide, and you can kind of see how it works here. You can click on, are you thinking about relapsing? And you click on that, and it's going to give you suggestions for skills and tools you can use. Are you experiencing bad feelings? Click on that. It's going to give you some other examples of what you can do. Are you just wondering if you have an addiction? There's all sorts of things that this app can do for you. Do you need spirituality? One of the big bases of the 12-step programming. And this is a free app, so that part is really, really great. Now let's talk a little bit about distress tolerance. These are some of the experiential tools that people really enjoy. And this is a section that's full of really helpful coping skills. So just for example, if you take a look at the coping skills for distraction alone, the list is pages long. So a lot of times I have them go through and see what they're already doing. And many of them do a lot of these activities, but they don't think about them as activities as strategies for sitting with or coping with feelings or fighting urges. So for self-soothing, one of the most popular experiential activities that we do is making a crisis survival kit, which I referenced back during the urge surfing explanation. So if you make a crisis survival kit, basically you are going to, I'm going to flip back and forth here for a second. This is an example of a crisis survival kit. So you want to have something to soothe through the five senses. So for like touch, you want to make stress balls. So you see these balloons, this yellow and the red one here. These are just balloons that we bought, and we got some funnels. And you put the funnels in the top of the balloon, and then you can fill the balloons with cornmeal or flour or salt or lentils or navy beans, or you can mix all those textures together. I believe this one over here is a mixed texture. And they can use them. I find the large size balloon at Walmart tend to be the better ones. For vision, this is hard to sort of see, but this little white bottle here is bubbles. They can use coloring books. And then some people in the bottom, it's hard to see, but there's a CD down there. And I believe that might be a CD as well. For hearing, for music. And then for smell, this is a little aromatherapy candle. Essential oils are phenomenal for smell. Taste, it's hard to see them in here. This probably might be in this one. Let me just see. There's some other touch stuff like Play-Doh and another coloring book. A lot of times I will recommend, there's a little bottle of lotion there too for touch. Altoids or warheads, things that are really, really extreme taste or strong taste are really, really helpful for people. It kind of jolts the brain out of the spot that it was in. It's actually one of the skills in TIP. So you can make a kit like this by taking, we got these containers actually at Walmart for maybe like $1 a piece, or you can use Ziploc containers too. And what I want them to do is go through this whole entire kit when they're having strong emotions. And I have found both clientele really enjoy this. I had one, I used to also do some work with opiate addiction. And there's one client who was able to really stay sober by using this kit for a period of time. She said, I've had it under my bed, and I think you should make everybody do this because I can't tell you how many times this kit has kept the needle out of my arm. And I've had many clients also say, eating disorder patients say, I can't tell you how many times this kit has kept me out of the bathroom and has kept me away from the pharmacy to go buy more laxatives. So once they make this kit, I also really encourage them to decorate the outside so that they have, I forget if this one before has, this person just has a poem that was really inspirational to her in there. I have them do positive affirmations to read. You can see those here. There's also a card called the Wonky Thoughts card, and that really is for people to write down a belief that they have about themselves on one side, and then 3 challenges on the back of it. So for example, I'm worthless and I don't deserve anything is the belief. And then on the back, one of the objective arguments could be like, well, since I don't like myself very much, I'm not a very good judge of my character or what I deserve. I'm going to flip backwards for a sec, back to the distress tolerance stuff. So that's an example for you for how to soothe through the 5 senses using a crisis survival kit. Improve the moment is something that we're doing. We're using relaxation. We want to practice a mini vacation and relaxation. Between improve the moment and self-soothing, one of the things that we use a lot up here at CDC New Hampshire is essential oils. We use food-grade oils of Young Living or doTERRA. And there's some other ones out there too, but those tend to be, the quality is really high. And there's a lot of things that you can do with them. For example, somebody who's really, really stressed, Young Living makes an oil called Stress Away. If you put it on your wrists or you put it on, believe it or not, the pads of your big toe, it really brings down stress level. Lavender is another amazing oil that helps people just relax and get out of a tense situation. Lang Lang is an oil for tension. If people don't know where to put them, there are VitaFlex charts that are available online. the things that you can do with them never cease to amaze me. Citrus blend is a blend that has been really helpful for healing eating disorders. Bergamot is indicated in supporting the body and healing from an eating disorder. You can use them in diffusers. We have multiple diffusers around CDC of New Hampshire. The patients love them. It's actually really helped to keep the atmosphere calm and relaxed much of the time. And my colleague Ruth always says, like, I don't know why we can't make everybody take off their shoes and put lavender on their big toes, because it just seems to help so many people. We don't actually do that unless they want to, but the point being is that it's incredibly effective. And for people who have an interest in essential oils, the eating disorder and addiction population really benefits remarkably from their use, particularly when you know what oils are used for what. I guess that's a talk for another day, right? So anyway, here are some other distress tolerance skills, like writing out pros and cons of tolerating or feeling an urge, and helping them to really focus on the long-term goal, usually by using posters and placemats or cards to carry those things on, or again, like the wonky thoughts cards. Being able to use some encouragement by using warrior triumph cards. Those are basically, you take a stack of index cards. I love doing this in a group. And say you have 10 people in a group, right? So you'd give each member of the group 9 index cards. And what they do is they would make a card for each person in the group, not themselves, but everybody else in the group, to say one thing that they saw that person accomplish that's positive and in service of their recovery. And then you leave it upside down at the person's feet. So at the end of the group, everybody has like 9 different cards, and then they can carry those with them as a reminder. And then practicing radical acceptance is, just sort of teaching it. It's not the same as judging something as good, but it is, sort of how to get unstuck by accepting that you can't change a set of circumstances, but you can change how you respond to it. And that is another one where using situation cards comes in really handy, as well as the reminders, like the warrior triumph cards or wonky thought cards, just things that help people stay grounded that they can pull out and use with them. In a moment, I'm just flipping back through here. One other thing that I want to talk to you about is how to make a coping bank. This is super simple. This is just the 3 for $1 disposable containers that we got from the dollar store, and 100 teeny slips of paper. And the goal for the client is to write 100 different things that they can do. And you can use the adult pleasurable activity schedule that Linehan has in the training manuals. I highly recommend editing it because there's a lot of inappropriate stuff on there for eating disorders and for addicts. There's stuff on there that says, like, have sex, cook brownies, chop wood. I'm not sure that we really want anybody with self-injurious tendencies to be wielding an axe. I'm not really sure why Linehan put that in there, but it's in there, so cross that off. And I usually just kind of go through with a Sharpie, black it out, and then photocopy it so they can't read through the Sharpie. But ideally, the easiest thing to do is have them Google 100 things to do when you're bored, and then have them fill out these slips of paper so you can see that first one, right? It says, go for a ride, take only your license and keys, no money or credit cards. So you don't have money to stop at your drug dealers. You also don't have money to go through the drive-through to get binge food or to go to the store to get laxatives, but you can drive someplace and relax a little bit. Now, to use this in tandem with the urge surfing, what I tell them to do is, when you make the crisis survival kit, you make your coping banks, and when you're up there in that urge surfing curve where you're up at the top where it says choice and you're white knuckling it, that's exactly when you want to grab your crisis survival kit and you want to use everything in your crisis survival kit, and then take a peek at where your urges are. If on a scale of 1 to 10, you're still above a 5, then I want you to grab your coping bank, and I want you to choose 3 slips of paper. And no matter what, I want you to do 2 of those things for at least 60 minutes. If the urges remain, I want you to use your entire crisis survival kit again. And then if you've done that twice, and the urge is still around, you have the option to use the behavior or to do another round of a coping bank crisis survival kit. And then I want you to fill out the urge surfing questions. And that's how you can use these two things in tandem with urge surfing. So you have your distress tolerance skills coupled with your emotion regulation skills to help people be more effective in their skills usage. Now let's put all of this together, assuming that we have clients who have been working in the different modules for a period of time with different kinds of experiential ideas that I've given you. Here's ways that you can put all of the skills together to help them see how they work together. This is one of the easiest things to do. It's a DBT Jeopardy game. You can do it like this, which is just a black presentation board with colored index cards. You can handwrite or print things out. On the back of the cards for questions, you can have scenarios and have people give you the skill that would be most effective in dealing with that scenario. You can ask specific questions about a skill and how to apply it, or just what the name of a skill is. If you don't have a presentation board, don't feel like writing all this stuff out, if you have a whiteboard, it's so easy to write this stuff on the whiteboard and then just have your questions in your hand. I have found that both the addicted population and the eating disorder population absolutely loves to play this game. And it's really great to also have them playing for a prize at the end. So for the eating disorder population, actually for both populations, one of the prizes is typically an already made crisis survival kit for them. Sometimes in other places that I've worked, we've given out $5 gift cards for like Aroma Joe's or Dunkin' Donuts. They get super excited when they're actually playing for that. I mean, you'd think they're playing for like $1 million in cash, but you know, I guess both people who are addicted and eating disorder patients really like their caffeine. So, but I've seen them equally excited about winning a really nice crisis survival kit that we have put together. If you really struggle with trying to figure out how to sort of phrase the questions or what scenarios to come up with, or like even how to really put this game together, or you're just really excited and don't want to take the time to do it, you just want to get started with it. If you go to the website that I had referenced earlier, the ilovedbt.com /DBT hyphen handouts hyphen, I think it was worksheets. It was the one that I had mentioned earlier. There are 5 different sets of DBT questions that are already done for you, that all you have to do is put the categories up on your whiteboard and just go play the game with the group. And I think it bears mentioning that while certainly this is very fun to do with a group of people, you can also do it in individual therapy. You can play the game with your client by just quizzing and using the questions. This is a game that I created many years ago on how to how to help our clients conceptualize the recovery process using DBT skills. And you could also honestly adapt this to any skill that you want to reinforce. So basically, these are just simple materials. This is a basically poster board that says, what's getting in the way. This is the start line. This is the issues box and the recovery box. These little squares of colors are Post-it notes, and on the back of these Post-it notes are literally issues that people need to solve, like relationship problems, PTSD symptoms, weight restoration, anxiety, panic attacks, whatever, interpersonal relationship issues. And then on the back of these are all the gifts of recovery. This is kind of the kit itself that I made. These slips of paper in here are all DBT skills that are kind of cut out. They're cheat sheets. And these are the instructions. It's super simple. I am more than happy to share these instructions with you. Also, if you want to email me at mostroff@cedcmail.com, I will get those to you. And this is how the game works. Over here, this is a starting line. The circles are all people, okay? So you have somebody play the client, somebody play the voice of the eating disorder, somebody play the voice of recovery, and then the people that are left in the group all stand along the side, and they're holding different skills. And depending on how many people you can have people holding a lot of skills or people just holding one skill. And the game starts by the voice of the eating disorder and the voice of recovery arguing with each other. Sounds a little like this. What they're trying to do, the voice of the eating disorder is always trying to get the client to go back and to stay with him. The voice of recovery is trying to coax the individual to get over the starting gate, through the issues box, and into recovery. That's the object. So it's kind of like a human board game in that way. So it starts out with the voice of the eating disorder saying things like, "Stay with me. I will keep you thin. Thin is successful. You will never get fat. You will feel great." And then you have the voice of recovery down the other end going, "Don't listen to him. All he does is lie. He's made multiple promises for you. None of them have ever come true. What has it gotten you? In the hospital? Great. Come to me. I will give you the gift of real relationship. I will give you the gifts of your own authentic voice, self-confidence, healthy body." And they just keep going back and forth until invariably the client decides to step over the starting line and goes into the issues box. When the client is in the issues box, they bend down and they start picking up issues, and they will read whatever the issue might be. And we're going to want them to pick up most of these issues. So say the client reaches down and it says, issue is conflict with father. Then the person holding, for example, dear man, and then like give and pass skills will say, they'll say like, this person steps forward and says, "I'm dear man, and I can help you give your father feedback into the things that he does and doesn't do that negatively impact you, and can help you negotiate in how to get what you need from him." And then give will step forward. The person holding give, which is down here, will step forward and say, "I'm give. I can help you preserve the relationship and help your father have good, healthy feelings about you while you are trying to get your needs met." And then the person holding fast will step forward and says, "I'm fast. I can help you retain your feelings of self-worth and self-confidence by making you not be a doormat and be able to stand up for yourself in a way that is healthy. I'm radical acceptance. I can help you by realizing," and it just kind of keeps going until people can't, until the skills are kind of exhausted, basically. And then the individual who's playing the client would put the sticky note in their pocket and then move on to the next issue. And you sort of keep repeating this with individuals stepping forward each time an issue is read to say, "I am, insert name of skill. I can help you solve that issue by," and then the explanation of how you would apply that skill to that situation. If there's enough people, we have a therapist there, and the therapist has really, this sounds terrible, but doesn't have much of a role in this particular game outside of to stand slightly behind the client, sometimes with a hand on the shoulder just to represent support, or to assist all of these individuals in the application of the skills. So if somebody is offering up their skill, the person playing the therapist may elaborate more on how they can use that skill, or how to tweak, or will tweak it a little bit. That's also the facilitator. You as a facilitator of this game will certainly be the person with the final say in the correct application of that skill if somebody's getting it a little bit wrong. It's your opportunity to really do some big coaching here. Eventually, the issues are exhausted. They have a pocket full of issues, and then they step forward into the recovery box and they start picking up the gifts of recovery and reading them out loud. And it's this beautiful feel-good time where they're, reading off things like self-confidence and self-esteem and a healthy body and feeling proud and feeling like they have their whole self and healthy relationships and all sorts of things. And at the end, it's this really beautiful metaphor, honestly, because the person playing the client is standing there with this handful of brightly colored sticky notes that are full of the gifts of recovery. And yet all the issues are still in their pocket, which is representative of what really happens, right? Those issues start out up in the front of their head. And then as we work through them, those issues they might still be there. Maybe they're resolved, but the memory of them is there. Or maybe we're even still working on them a little bit, but they're not right up front. They're not billboards anymore. They are undercover and they are in pockets and they're being dealt with in healthy ways. And the person has this balance of these gorgeous gifts of recovery and a really healthy, happy life. You can also have them model the process of relapse by literally throwing away the gifts of recovery on the floor and pulling their issues back out and, going back to the starting line. And then you ask them, what do you think is going to happen to get you back into recovery? And sometimes they'll say, oh, I have to start from the very beginning. And the answer is, well, no, not exactly. Because recovery is very much like a spiral staircase where you're constantly, sort of going around, but you're going up, you're increasing levels. So there may be a point where, you start on the left. Let's see if I can do this with the pointer. So if you start on the left and you start spiraling up, right? You might get stuck here and you started here, but you're 3 levels up. So it looks similar, but it's actually different. And recovery is about then picking all these skills back up and applying them to the issues again, and then you get your gifts of recovery back. And you can walk through that pretty quickly with them. It's a wonderful way of seeing where people are at in terms of their skills use and skills application and understanding of which skills to use in what situations. I have so much fun with this game. This is another game that is called Roadblocks to Recovery, DBT Skills Game. This looks super complicated. It's really not. This is the starting line, and it's a piece of string that you tape to the floor. This is also a piece of string that's taped to the floor. And this is a piece of string taped to the floor, and this is a string. And then these blue circles are all paper plates. And how it works is this. You have 2 people volunteer. One person, the client, is blindfolded. The other person is actually going to be their guide. And the object is to get the person to go. You have to choose a string. It doesn't really matter what string you use, and you can switch strings as you start moving forward. But the person is going to walk on top of the string, heel to toe, staying on top of the string. And the person who's not blindfolded has to verbally guide them in where to go and how to do this without falling off the string. Now, if they bump a paper plate, they have to stop. They keep their blindfold on, and the guide flips the paper plate over, and the paper plate over is what would be a roadblock. And it's a description of a situation. So for example, the person's bumps into this plate. They start here and they're guided all the way up, and they touch this plate. They tried to step over it. They didn't quite step over it far enough, and they bumped the plate. So the guide flips over the paper plate, and it says something along the lines of, you went out for snack, you've been doing pretty well, and everyone at the table is talking about calories, and you start to panic. Then in order for the person to continue moving in the game, they have to name 3 skills that they would use to deal with that situation. And if they get the 3 skills that are going to be effective, then they can carry on until they hit the next plate. And then when they hit the next plate, the guide again picks up the plate, flips it over, reads the situation, and again they have to name 3 skills that would be effective in dealing with that, whatever that situation might be. And I do have a bunch of those already done that I can also be more than happy to share with you folks. It's another great way to help see if your clients are knowing which skills are most helpful in specific situations so that they're most effective and they're not just kind of pulling skills out of the sky and applying skills that are not going to be effective in situations. And it's really fun. Surprisingly, clients have a really good time being blindfolded and guided through and thinking of situations. The other thing that can happen is you can keep group members, well, a couple things. Depending on how many strings you put out and how many paper plates, you can have 6 people going at the same time. You can have 3 blindfolded and 3 guides, or you can just have 1 person and 1 guide going through with other people assisting in skills coaching or ideas if the client gets stuck, or adding to the pressure of what needs to be coped with. They can be yelling encouragement, or they can be yelling roadblocks. So it's really a game that's a lot of fun and really helps you, like I said, see where your clients are at. I like the analogy of the blindfolded person, because a blindfold itself symbolizes our blind spots as we move through recovery. And the person who is acting as a guide also has to work on their describing skills. So the whole game is kind of full of this experiential in vivo coaching opportunities and skills practice, which is so important in mastery. Then just a couple of easy things to sort of wind up with. So this is not super experiential, but a little bit. We always, a lot of times we'll have our clients use diary cards, which is an organized way to track the intensity of feelings, behaviors, and skills used. All different kinds of cards out there. I can't remember if I actually put an eating disorder adapted card in the downloads or not. Again, happy to share it with you if I did not. There's lots of different versions of diary cards available on the I Love DBT website, one of which I really enjoy. It's a bank statement card where every time you use a skill, it is a deposit, and every time you use a behavior or you don't use a skill, it's a withdrawal, so that they can actually see at the end of the week what their balance is. If you're using a lot of skills, you want to have a positive balance, not a negative balance. But it's really nice because, I'm going to flip over here, you can track and graph their skills use. So for example, if you look at the lighter line is skills and the darker line is behaviors. So on Monday, they didn't use any skills, but they used 5 behaviors. On Wednesday, they used 6 skills and no behaviors. And on Thursday, they used 2 behaviors and 4 skills. But the idea here is that you should be able to graph it out so that they see the more skills they use, the fewer behaviors they have going on. Let me go backwards for a moment. So anyway, ideally, there's all kinds of shortcut versions of the diary card. There's like a Wise Mind diary card or skills diary cards that can be easier to use. But it really helps you adapt DBT to their goals for recovery and tracking the usage. If the goal is to not restrict, you can focus on mindful eating, radical acceptance, checking the facts. In mindfulness, what are you avoiding? Being one mindfully in the moment, or building structure around your meals and snacks. If the goal is not to purge, you can focus on urge surfing, distress tolerance, using the crisis survival kits, wonky thought cards, coping banks. I think it is really worth adapting the cards yourself so that you can add in some of the skills that are like specific to eating disorders and addiction. So like for eating disorders, you want to add in the urge surfing skills and the coping banks and crisis survival kits. For substance use, there's also alternate rebellion, which is basically, if you think about drug use, in part, it's used as a way to rebel against the restrictions and deprivations of like life and society while simultaneously destroying their life. Like, be effective in finding a way to rebel without harming yourself. So maybe that's going to be dyeing your hair, or getting a tattoo, or, wearing leather. That seems like a strange one, but, or take a flying lesson. And then there's adaptive denial, which is, the awareness or acceptance of ongoing abstinence and the loss of basically their drug using friends can get really overwhelming. So you block that knowledge out, or just kind of push it away for a period of time, so that the aspects of reality that feel unmanageable can be an adaptive use of denial. So you can use other distress tolerance skills to focus on the moment. So focus on the decision to be abstinent for just one day. That's all that's required. Make it for one day. And you commit to it for as long as you feel comfortable with, and then you recommit at the end of that period. Burning your bridges, you can use that for both eating disorders and drug use. That's telling everybody that you're in recovery. Throw out phone numbers from your drug-using friends or your dealers. It is having somebody else hold your money and credit cards sometimes. It is, for eating disorders, explaining what being in recovery means, but it's also not making like really close, great friends with people that you meet in treatment centers. Because most of us know when that happens, when one of the individuals starts to struggle, they both go down at the same time. So burn your bridges to things that can increase likelihood of relapse. Avoid and eliminate cues to use, like take a new route home, throw out your drug paraphernalia, redecorate your room, get rid of the, sort of geographic cues to use, so to speak, or those environmental triggers, like somebody who goes away to treatment and then comes home to the room where they were using drugs or shooting up, or the bathroom where they've been spending time binging and purging. Redecorating it and making it look different gets rid of some of those memories and triggers for some people. And then many of you who have been doing DBT have used the behavioral analysis, which is a chain of worksheets. But I'll tell you, I find that while it can be helpful to write that out, and certainly it is helpful to write it all out, I think it is equally helpful to role play it out. So have the person describe what the problem behavior was to you and practice those describing and observing skills. Figuring out what the precipitating event was. What were the vulnerability factors? How was the please skill used or not used? And what was the chain of events? And, pull in those wise mind, emotion mind, and rational mind role plays and skits that you did. So it's really an opportunity to collaborate and coach with the client. So that is pretty much it for today. I really, really want to underscore that just remember to have fun with this. Be creative. Never underestimate the power of a Snoopy dance. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Clients remember what they do. Clients remember what is fun, and we do the same thing. So hopefully this has given you some ideas that you can use these exact things or some jumping off points for you to be able to expand on them and do some new things on your own. If you have other things that you do, I would love to hear about them. If I can help you in any way, if you would like more material that I have mentioned here today but did not provide in the handouts, I would be happy to share that with you. My contact information is Ostroff, that is Ostroff, at cedcmail.com, or feel free to call me at CDC New Hampshire at 603-715-5150. My extension is 104. I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can. I wanted to thank you very much for your time and attention today, and I look forward to collaborating with all of you in the future. Thank you so much.